Yo, America's a black country. Okay, we need to get on the same page about this because this is the truest that you're gonna hear today. And I'm saying this as like a Chinese American male who was born and raised in Metro Detroit, in Michigan, and have only ever been unconditionally really supported by black folk.
How you take 400 years of oppression, suffering, violence, thievery, brutality, dehumanization, and make that shit so dope the world wants to consume it. The world wants to wear it. The world wants your stamp.
We had civil rights because of black people.
I think right now is a very important time for us to acknowledge the fact that we have more in common with our friends of color than we do with white people.
Black and Asian people could just admit that we love each other's cultures. We're obsessed with each other. We're obsessed with one another's brilliance.
Apparently, Asian Americans are siding with Black Americans. And this is not something that Black Americans are used to. In this video, we're going to be reacting to a bunch of clips of Asian Americans giving Black Americans their flowers, acknowledging how useful Black Americans are to their own community. I want y'all to watch these clips from the beginning to the end. And as you're watching, please remember to give a video a like and also drop your comment down there in the comment section.
So the reality of the situation is that there's no way that people can be violently removed from their motherland for 400 years, have their language removed from them, stolen from them constantly, and constantly being tricked into participating in a society that exploits your labor, your brilliance, your dignity, your honor, your love, your heart, okay? Because black people make things safe. Black people are compassion. Black people embody unconditional love, truly. Everybody else has created conditions to fit into society for safety. Black people hold it the down. And we need to recognize this before we just let people kill themselves because we want, we're too afraid to share truth. All right, you know this. Come on.
Love each other's cultures. We're obsessed with each other. We're obsessed with one another's brilliance, resilience, perseverance, strength, intelligence, ability to make everything so complex and so simple at the same time simultaneously, and that we love one another's foods, one another's cultures, one another's appearance, personalities, spirits in this way so deeply that the only time that we really start to hurt each other or try to hurt each other is when we're stressed under the forces of white supremacy, imperialism, or colonization, and we start to hurt each other because we feel that we hate ourselves and we have to kill ourselves, when truly deep down we are constantly being inspired and internalizing just the brilliance of one another. And I just want you to know that I see you and I love you and I appreciate you for being here, because we will remember this eventually. It's only a matter of time.
I want to take a moment to give flowers to black people. Let's make it weird for a second. How the f you take 400 years of oppression, suffering, violence, thievery, brutality, dehumanization, and make that shit dope the world wants to consume it. The world wants to wear it. The world wants your stamp of approval that they deserve to take up space in trauma conversation. The amount of people around the world that I've met that want the past to say the N-word is hilarious. If they knew any conception as to how bad life still is in the projects, life still is on the other side of the red line tax bracket zone, that this country still perpetuates its culture to be superior upon your body through, and yet you make it look so good. People didn't even know you were hurting. I want to take a moment to really just give black people flowers, man, because this world owes everything that it is to the struggles that your people have gone through and brought into this language, because the slave traders, the thieves, the enslaved masters stole yours. You are freaking brilliant. There's genius in your melanin that the world is still scared to let you know exists. So I want to take a moment to just give black people your flowers, because I know that my people don't know how to. But if they're anything like me when I was a kid, like they want to. And they know that they should. So from my Chinese ancestors to black supremacy greatness, stay black forever, stay dangerous. Thank you for giving a dragon like me a place in the world.
Our movements are all connected at their roots. In 1968, the Third World Liberation Front was a coalition of Latino, Black, Asian, and Native college students in the Bay Area. They were angry. After working to get admitted and paying expensive tuition, their classes and textbooks had little in common with their lived experiences and communities. When San Francisco State fired several of the already few professors of color, student groups leapt into action. They went on strike, occupying campus buildings and demanding equitable admissions, more faculty of color, and the removal of Army recruiters from campus. Administrators responded by banning student gatherings and calling in police. Faculty began joining students on strike. After months of tension, police violence, and multiple arrests, agreements were finally reached. The Third World Liberation Front's legacy lives on in ethnic studies departments, which didn't exist until these students demanded them. Yet, some argue that these departments let universities silo away scholarship of color, while most departments remain exclusionary and Eurocentric. Still, it's important to remember the Third World Liberation Front as a moment that showed us what it can look like when Latino, Asian, Black, and Native communities fight together for a common cause.
My ancestors were asked by white men to come to this country, which they had stolen and forced Black people to build, because they were hoping that my ancestors would be the new cheap and disposable labor to undercut the recently freed Black people that lazy white men didn't want to pay. And when my ancestors wouldn't do that, they were lynched and massacred, their towns were destroyed, they were blown up while building the railroads, and ultimately they were excluded from society and the country for nearly 60 years. Then when the United States asked us to come back in the 1960s because they wanted to put us in the way of Black people again, and the United States needed to rehabilitate its reputation with Asian countries that were gaining in economic and political power, we had civil rights because of Black people.
I think right now is a very important time for us to acknowledge the fact that we have more in common with our friends of color than we do with white people. I know it can be very easy for us to feel protected by the majority class because of our status as the model minority, but whether people want to acknowledge it or not, we are people of color. I know it can be hard to admit, it can be hard to accept, especially considering that racism against Asian people is hardly ever taken seriously. But right now is a very serious, dangerous time for us and for our friends of color. And you cannot erase the fact that you are a person of color based on your proximity to whiteness. And I say that as a Chinese adoptee who was adopted by a white family. My husband is white, I live in a very white area of the country. Trust me, I understand. It can be very easy to slip into the mindset of I'm just like them, I'm gonna be fine, I don't have to do anything. And I know there is a lot of division across the Asian community right now, but right now we need to stand together as people, we need to stand up for each other, and we need to stand up for our friends of color. There is no excuse anymore, and we have to remove our proximity to whiteness.
So according to Twitter, apparently Asians are not people of color. So this person made that tweet in response to Popbase's tweet about Michelle Yeoh being the second woman of color to ever win Best Actress. And I'm literally at a loss of words. Also, some of the things they're saying just literally makes no sense. Like, this person made this comment and they responded with, still not gonna give Chinese people color. So are they implying that Michelle is Chinese? Because she's actually Malaysian. So they're just sounding like stupidly ignorant in their own comment section. And here they are again with like another response. And then this person said that Asians is more than just Chinese. A lot of Asian people have darker complexions, including South Asians. And they're like, yeah, those are the actual colored ones. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I am a lighter skinned East Asian person because I'm Chinese. Sorry, let me go look for my white privilege real quick. Because last time I checked, I didn't have any. But I just think this is such an L take in general. Look, we can all agree that society places a big emphasis on light skin in most countries. And in the US as well. And if you do have lighter skin, you do have more benefits. And that is super effed up. Like, skin tones of every color is beautiful, and the privileges you get shouldn't be affiliated with literally how you physically look. But if you're a person of color, whether you have a light skin or dark skin, you still experience prejudices that people who are white do not experience. Which is why we are all people of color. It literally is, as long as you're not white, you're a person of color. And I kind of feel like this feeds back into the cultural feud between like the Asian community and the Black community. I don't know too much about it, but from what I've seen, it always seems like they're kind of like butting heads. But at the end of the day, we are all both still people of color. And instead of just like going at each other's necks all the time, we're missing the bigger problem overall, which is this like Eurocentric, white-favored society that we should be fighting against. Not each other, because like, why are we oppressing each other even more?
One thing Americans need to wake up to a lot is monolinguistic cultures, nations, empires is a rare thing. For most of human history, language was the primary gatekeeper. And so part of why I think light-skinned Asians think that we can get in, and why, to a degree, we have been let in the whole mono-minority thing, is the belief that if we can talk the talk, they'll let us in. And they're not entirely wrong. Black people have understood this since they were enslaved and brought here. Boots Riley's Sorry to Bother You, right, goes into that. Like having a white voice, being able to talk like the white people. And for us as Asians, I think there is a cultural valuation difference. I don't think that a lot of first generation immigrants fully realize, and again, I'm talking about the light-skinned ones, right? Fully realize how much greater colorism is in America than the language segregation. And I'll share with you, like, I have an odd experience with this because I am routinely, on this app even, complimented on my voice. And I want to tell you that as a child, I was very cognizant of the fact that this was the way that I would be accepted. This was the way that I could fit in. And this was the way that I could achieve status and power. Now, could I have articulated all of that at the time? No. But I knew that when I read well, when I talked well, when I spoke well, that I would get more attention and that I could get in. Because growing up in Houston, being Asian and my friends who were Black, we were on the same side. Like in school, we're on the same side, right? Like, but then when I moved to Los Angeles, and it was bizarre to me that Black people and Asians were not friends. And I learned about, you know, the uprisings and I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I think the Asian American community also has some of the answers that we need because like the Pakistani and Indian kids, right? Like for me, having friends who were Chinese, Asian Americans have learned how to ally with each other despite long historical grudges, rightly so. Despite linguistic and religious differences, we have learned to ally together, kind of. And isn't that what we need more of? That's my pitch.
So on the no side, some people said no, Asians are not considered POC, and it's often because, you know, our skin is light.
No, the reason America wants to consider Asian people white is because it's a lot easier to exclude them from things academically if we make them white on paper. Asian Americans are the most successful people in America, so why should they benefit from special grants, minority scholarships, and affirmative action, right? America being America, they don't want to look racist excluding Asian Americans from things who are the smallest percentage of people in America next to Native Americans. Now, of course, Asians aren't white. A lot of them are even darker than me. I think if we're going to make dumb laws and benefits for POCs and then condemn Asian Americans for the hard work and dedication they put into their academics and prove statistically that minorities and POCs do not need a helping hand, which helps prove institutional racism in 2022, might just be baloney. Other POCs don't like that. They want institutional racism to thrive. They want it to be alive and succeed because you know why? That benefits them. Anyway, I don't want to go on a tangent. Let me know your guys' opinion in the comments.
It kind of shot me back a little bit of the idea that Asians are the model minority, but like, Asians are the model minority until it's no longer convenient for people who are trying to uphold that myth. That myth was originally weaponized during the civil rights movement to create a division between Asian people and other minority groups. And it's not a celebration of our accomplishments, it's actually more of a convenient tool to mask ongoing discrimination and inequality that's happening between different minority groups. I wanted to bring that up because I recently had a talk about my family about just honestly Vietnamese Republicans and a lot of Trump supporters. It's so frustrating to see that it's now becoming a stereotype that there's a lot of Vietnamese Republicans and a lot of Vietnamese Trump supporters in the community. I know so many other young Vietnamese Americans that have made it a joke about their parents being Trump supporters because it's a relating quality between a lot of Vietnamese Americans and a lot of Vietnamese youth where their parents are Trump supporters, and that's something that everyone can relate on, and that's a little bit disappointing. I know that there's a massive literacy problem among Vietnamese war refugees, and many of the resources available in Vietnamese are very hate-centered, and it breaks my heart to see my own family be influenced by people in their lives. I've seen that there are people who just tell my family something and then my family will take that at face value because it's coming from someone that they trust, even though they shouldn't just be trusting this person just because they're telling them that. And then I feel like when someone tells them a very hate-fueled statement, they'll take it to heart, and then it takes 10 times more convincing to get them out of that. And it's just been a heartbreaking conversation to have with a lot of my family, and I feel like sometimes so alone on it. I have always been an outspoken person, especially within my own family. A lot of my family is very reserved, and it is very popular in the Vietnamese culture to avoid a lot of that conflict. I've never been like that. I'm always been like, if I have an issue, I'm gonna say something outright. And I just feel like sometimes so alone on it. A lot of my family will look down on other immigrants when they are boat people. I'm first gen, so they are literally the boat people. And they don't really understand how many refugees and how many community members have received orders of deportation or just are facing a lot of these issues that they think don't apply to them. And it's just, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'm looking for solace. I don't know if I'm looking for community. But I just get really heartbroken when I see people that I love, people that I respect, people in my own family that I thought were better, that I held to a high regard, influenced in this way and refused to listen to reason. I don't know, it's just been breaking my heart, and I wonder if a lot of other Vietnamese Americans are facing this. I specifically say Vietnamese Americans and refugees because that's my experience. I understand that a lot of other communities probably face the same issue, but I don't want to speak on anyone else's experience. I have talked to my friend who's Vietnamese, and I have other friends who are Cambodian who have shared same sentiments, but I don't want to speak on their experience.
You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me that feeling when somebody says something about you and you don't know whether to be surprised or relieved. That's what this felt like for many Black Americans. Because let's be honest, Black Americans are used to being analyzed, studied, criticized, debated, but not always openly credited. So when I watch those clips and hear those Asian Americans openly, clearly say that their position in America is connected to Black American struggles, I paused. Not because it sounded nice, but because it sounded risky. And that is the part people don't talk about. It is risky for those Asian Americans to say what they said publicly. It is risky to step out of your comfort and admit that your community benefited from policies and movements that were not originally built for you. Most Asian Americans don't do that. Most people in America don't do that. Most people stay quiet and enjoy benefits quietly. So when somebody does not stay quiet, it shifts the room. And here is something else I kept thinking about. This wasn't flattery. Flattery sounds soft. This didn't sound soft. This sounded like someone who understands that history is layered, that immigration waves, labor systems, civil rights laws, it's like getting into a house and understand that you didn't build the foundation, but you live comfortably in it. That awareness will eventually change how you move. Now, I know some of y'all might be still cautious, and I get it, because we have seen many moments where groups align with Black Americans temporarily and then drift apart when things get tense. But you can hear from those Asian Americans, they don't sound temporarily, especially that specific part when they started talking about proximity to whiteness. That part wasn't for applause. That was internal. It was coming out of themselves, from their soul. And self-criticism inside your own community is never easy. In America, every minority group eventually faces a choice: blend in and get comfortable, and risk losing comfort. Some choose silence because silence is safe. Some choose alignment with power because power feels stable. But the moment you say, we are connected to Black struggle, you step away from neutrality, and the neutrality is comfortable. This wasn't neutral, and that is why it got serious. It wasn't just cultural appreciation. It wasn't just we love hip-hop. It was structural acknowledgement. I also noticed something subtle. In those clips, we have also noticed something subtle. There was no begging for approval. It wasn't please accept us. It was more like we recognize the truth. We are saying it. And all of those Asian Americans were saying it confidently, because real solidarity does not look like desperation. It looks like clarity. What does this mean for Black Americans watching right now? It doesn't mean automatic trust. It doesn't mean pretending tension never existed. But it does mean that some Asian Americans are ready to unite with Black Americans. They are ready to support Black Americans. Online, it is very easy to paint communities as permanently against each other. That kind of story will get clicks and they will spread fast. But reality is more complicated. We've got many Asian Americans who grow up in Black neighborhoods. We've got many Black Americans who grow up around Asian classmates. They've got shared experiences of discrimination, stereotypes, pressure to perform, pressure to assimilate. Those overlaps don't erase differences, but they create intersections. And sometimes intersections are where alliances start. And I kept thinking about this phrase, model minority. The label didn't come from nowhere. It was strategically placed. It created comparison. It created a silent competition. It created this idea that success is a proof that racism is over. But if one group reject that label and say that we see the bigger picture, that we disrupt the comparison, and once the comparison is disrupted, the tension will lose some of its fuel. Here is another thought. Maybe what makes this moment interesting is not what was said, it is who said it. Because once acknowledgement comes from inside the community, instead of them saying it just because of the pressure from outside, it carries more weight. If it was Black American who said, "You benefited from our struggle," it can be dismissed. But if Asian Americans themselves acknowledged that they benefited from Black Americans' struggle, it will hit differently. Now, I am curious about something. I don't know whether you're also curious. Is this the start of larger shift among young Asian Americans? Because younger generations tend to question narratives more. They are less attached to Cold War politics, less attached to old immigrants' survival strategies. Maybe they are more willing to examine uncomfortable truths. That is something worth paying attention to. And here is the real question. What happens next? Because their statements are powerful, but the patterns are more powerful. If more Asian voices echo this sentiment, it becomes cultural momentum. So I'm not looking at this emotionally. I'm looking at it strategically. Does this change how communities interact offline? Does this change how businesses operate? Does this change how conversations happen when tensions rise again? Or does it only stay in the comment section? That is what I'm watching for. And I want to know what you think about it. Just tell me in the comment section. And that was it for today. Like the video if you have enjoyed watching it. And if you have not yet subscribed, please support me by smashing the subscribe button. I'm Mr. TA signing off. Ciao.